السلام عليكم brothers. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمد ونصلي على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Inshallah, the best thing to do is to start with the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before anything else. So inshallah, one of our Hifz students, Imran, will be reciting some verses of Surah Al-Nahl, and thereafter inshallah I'll share a short introduction and the format of the program afterwards. Yeah.
السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولقد خلقنا الإنسان من صلصال من حمإ مسنون والجان خلقناه من قبل من نار السموم وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني خالق بشرا من صلصال من حمإ مسنون فإذا سويته ونفخت فيه من روحي فقعوا له ساجدين فسجد الملائكة كلهم أجمعون إلا إبليس أبى أن يكون مع الساجدين قال يا إبليس ما لك ألا تكون مع الساجدين قال لم أكن لأسجد لبشر خلقته من صلصال من حمإ مسنون قال فاخرج منها فإنك رجيم وإن عليك اللعنة إلى يوم الدين قال رب فأنظرني إلى يوم يبعثون قال فإنك من المنظرين إلى يوم الوقت المعلوم قال رب بما أغويتني لأزينن لهم في الأرض ولأغوينهم أجمعين إلا عبادك منهم المخلصين قال هذا صراط علي مستقيم إن عبادي ليس لك عليهم سلطان ليس لك عليهم سلطان إلا من اتبعك من الغاوين وإن جهنم لموعدهم أجمعين لها 7 أبواب لكل باب منهم جزء مقسوم صدق الله العظيم. السلام عليكم.
Takbir. MashaAllah. Inshallah, brothers. Just a quick format of tonight's program, inshallah. So, Mulana Asim will start off with the main program. After that, inshallah, we'll open the floor for some questions. And I would like to remind everyone that please keep the questions relevant to the topic. And we, inshallah, will also send some index cards upstairs for the sisters to be able to write their questions and send them back down. The second thing is mainly for the sisters after Salat al-Isha, after dinner, which is usually the main event, but after dinner, inshallah, there will be a special sisters halaqa, in which it will be for the sisters addressed and will be done by Sheikh Asim's wife. So if your wife is here, your daughter is here, uh, your, your niece, whoever, please have them attend that. Inshallah, it will be very beneficial. It will be very, very good for them to hear and interact with Sheikh Asim's wife. And inshallah, Sheikh Asim really doesn't need any introduction. Alhamdulillah, it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he's been a guest speaker, actually someone who has oversight over our community for almost 3 years now. So there's no real introduction needed. But one thing one can say, alhamdulillah, that Allah Ta'ala has brought him here as a means to facilitate us, and Allah Ta'ala has brought him here as a means for us to benefit from him. So inshallah, we should try our best to give him our undivided attention, as well as our undivided, any questions one has, anyone, especially regarding the topic, which is of course regarding how an Islamic household should be. Please do ask, because of course everyone here, goes home, how they conduct their day-to-day lives, how they conduct their day-to-day activities within their home. It's very important for us to know and very important for us to understand and internalize how a Muslim should really live their life in their home. So inshallah, without any further ado, I'll ask Sheikh Asim to begin. But first, I'd like to ask all the brothers who are in the back to make their way to the front, inshallah. Please make your way to the front. Let's try to fill in all the gaps. Wherever the gaps are, Shaitan fills those in. So we don't want Shaitan anywhere near this gathering, inshallah.
نحمد ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان إن يوحى إلي إلا أنما أنا نذير يختار قبل من خالق من شر فإذا سويته ونفخت فيه من روحي فقعت له فسجد من The topic of discussion today is very broad subject. Talk about it from many different aspects. Looking at some but one thing I wanted to mention before we actually get started, and that is that the one place we have okay. Decide that you can't love and government others can control how things are run. Therefore, there is a great chance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge us not by where we live, but what type of environment we live in. Because what we were controlling, what we had control over, we're responsible. We had no control over, we're not responsible. And that's a good way to also judge where a person is at. How strong connection any person has with Allah, with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just go to home sweet home. See what his house is like, what the environment is like, what he puts on his walls, what type of interaction he has with his children, what is the standards that he set, and he is in his set. That will be the final judge regarding where this person is. Yeah, he talks about being all the time, let's do this, let's do that. Really, talks don't mean anything. He can implement the deen. If he's not implementing it, then you know this person is from that's talks. Therefore, we have to be very, very careful. Make sure that our homes are following the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the environment that we establish in them are according to the will and the type of things. Because that's the first thing that we're going to do. This includes many things, as I mentioned in the beginning. You can look at this from many angles. How you raise your children. What are your priorities? I'll give you an example of priority. When the Prophet ﷺ migrated to Medina, what was the first thing that he did? What was the first thing that he did? He bought property. Right? He bought property from two orphans who were being raised by a Sahabi by the name of Sa'ad bin Zurara. And then he set about building a masjid. But he didn't just build the masjid, he built his house in the complex itself. So his house integrated into the masjid. Why? Because a masjid is a center of the life of a people. I'm not saying that those of us who don't live around the masjid are we have to have our priorities. If you're looking for the best school district for your child's education, you want to buy a house near that district, near that area, so your child can be enrolled over there, over the masjid. That tells you a lot about the type of environment you're going to settle in that house. Education has priority over 5 times. I'll give you a personal one. I live very close to literally walk. And alhamdulillah, I try my best to make it for the 5 times. If I'm sick, I fall short or I'm not keeping track of time. My children would come to me, now they're older, mashallah. They would say, "Abu, it's time for salah. Go." They would tell me to go. You, to me, going for salah regularly is very important because it's what we can see. So it's firmly embedded in their conscience. Their deen is very important. See what my father does. He goes for salah. And the house is right next to the mosque. They know that too. So my kids know the importance of deen, not through anything I said, but the environment that has been established. And that's based off of two things. For one, the proximity of the house to the masjid, for one. And number two, me commuting back and forth as much as I can. I don't tell the kids to go and pray. They go and pray. Now they're 14, 16. They know. We'll go together. Never in my life I think I have to utter to my kids, order my kids, why don't you pray? Why don't you do this? This is something that's understood because it was a priority that was already established. So going back to what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did as soon as he migrated, establishing the masjid and then building his house in the masjid complex. And by the way, all the Muhajir Sahaba, Abu Bakr Siddiq, Abdul Rahman bin Auf, Bilal radiallahu anhu, all had attached homes to the masjid. The only ones who didn't were the Ansar Sahaba, because they already lived in different parts of Medina. They were settled down from before. The Muhajirun were the new people in Medina. And they already had their local masajid. The Ansar had their masjid. So they used to come to Masjid al-Nabwi whenever they could, but not for everything. They had their own. The point I'm making is that everything should be centered around the masjid. That's very, very important. You're not going to get an environment, the proper spiritual environment of deen, without making that environment. It's not going to happen. That means a little bit of background on your part. That we're raising our children in a society where we have two threats. What are those threats? Let me ask you. Let's make this an interactive discussion. What are two threats that we face here? Excuse me? Right? Okay. Assimilation. Assimilation is one of the biggest things. What does assimilation mean? Basically, you live amongst the majority of people that are different from you, and the majority always has the upper hand. As a minority group, it's very easy to blend in with the majority. Which reminds me of one thing, and I'm going to get back. If you ever go to a synagogue, before you actually enter the synagogue, they have a sink. And you wash your hands. You wash your feet. And they have a little pedal at the bottom that runs the water. There's no actual handle at the top. That's the way they run it. It's kind of like their formal way of doing it. They wash their hands up to here. But it's not a part of the religion. It's not a part of Judaism to perform that, half ablution before they enter into the sacred, place where they do their praying. You know where they got it from? You'll be surprised. They got it from Spain. They got it from Spain. And who talked about Montgomery Watt, Orientalist? He said when the Jews lived in Spain, when the Muslims were in power at that time, it was the Jews constantly noticing that Muslims have this concept of evolution. If anybody's been to Turkey, you'll notice it everywhere in every masjid. You enter the main courtyard, there's a circular thing, there's chairs around it, there's faucets sticking out, and everybody performs their wudu. So they really like that. It's not a part of the religion, it's not in their scriptures, but they adopted it because they were a minority. And they still practice it to this day. That's good for them. But if we were to adopt that from another religion, something we thought the church, that would not be good. Because our deen has been very well defined. What we can do, what we cannot do, right? Sunnah, fard, wajib, bid'ah, have all been defined. Why have all these terms been created? In order to preserve the boundaries of Islam, so that nobody can take out anything that's in it or put anything in that's outside of it. Because as soon as somebody puts something in that's not a part of the deen, we immediately call it what? Bid'ah. We don't tolerate it. We have zero tolerance for it. And if somebody tries to disprove a sunnah to be a bid'ah, we're automatically gonna protest against that as well. Because it's been clearly defined. You have to remember this is unique only to our faith. The Christians don't have these very defined boundaries and limits. So in that sense, it's much easier for us to live as a minority, right? It's much easier for us to live as a minority because we know exactly what is sunnah. We know exactly what is bid'ah. So we're not just going to pick up anything and take it. We know we can't do certain things. So we're going to keep those things out of our homes as well. But there are certain things, بينهما مشتبهات. There's halal, there's haram, and there's the mushtabihat between them. Mushtabihat means the ambiguous thing, where you can't really tell if this is okay, is Allah pleased with this or not. What should be our position in those type of situations when we don't? So, Allah has laid out a principle in Quranic regarding alcohol. He says alcohol has benefits. By the way, if any Muslim says that alcohol has no benefit, when he knows that the Quran says that alcohol does have some benefits, this person becomes a kafir. He's denying what Allah is saying. We got to remember this. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to say, وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. Its harms are greater than its benefits. Therefore, not permitted. So, if you don't know whether something is right or not, or is good or not, then you have to be very careful and err on the side of caution to stay away from for the pleasure of Allah. This is going to take me to my first topic, my first point that I want to make regarding how to build that environment. There's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Personal. So far, you go with personal. Besides some. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ittaqil maharima takun a'bad an-nas." Stay away, be aware of the maharim. What are the maharim? Which are haram. Takun a'bad an-nas. You will be one of the greatest worshippers. Right? You'll be the greatest worshipper. The funny thing is, you're not actually doing anything. If you don't drink alcohol, you're not actually doing something. You're just preventing yourself from doing something. So, the scholars mentioned regarding this specific hadith that there's 2 points that we need to remember. Number one is what we call jalbul manfa'a, and number two is dafa'i mudarra. Jalbul manfa'a means seeking benefit. For example, praying salah. We're trying to get benefit. We're trying to get rewards. Okay? Helping people out in different ways. This is also jalbul manfa'a. Trying to get reward. Think of any good deed that can get you reward. Okay? So the jalbul manfa'a. And then there's dafa'i mudarra. Dafa'i mudarra means saving yourself from harm. Of these two, the most important is not the jalbul manfa'a, it's actually the dafa'i mudarra. It's more important to save yourself from harm than to seek benefit and reward. That's why Rasulullah is saying in this hadith that in order for you to become a devoted believer who worships Allah, you actually don't have to do much. You just have to prevent yourself from doing so. And you'll become the greatest worshiper. Fun. So, there's a hadith I want to share with you. There's a gathering of Sahaba Ridwanullahi Majma'in sitting with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they're talking with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And talking to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sahaba mentioned to him that there's one person. He does so much ibadah, and he's just doing ibadah all the time. Devoted to dhikr and this and that. There's another Sahaba. He says, Ya Rasulullah, I know one other Sahabi. This person, he doesn't do much ibadah, but he's very strict about certain things. So he won't allow himself to do this. He won't allow himself to do that. He's very strict on himself. It's not like he does a lot of ibadah, but he prevents himself. He has very strict boundaries about what he can. which we call in Arabic wara'a. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, between these two people, la ta'dil birri'ati. Nothing equals wara'a. In other words, to prevent yourself from things that can destroy your deen. What I'm basically saying is that this cell phone here, okay, has a lot of benefits. It also has a lot of dangerous things in it. Right? A lot of dangerous things in it. If I don't pray tahajjud, but I'm very careful, I've set limits for how much I can use it, what times of the day, and I can't use this beyond 7 p.m. In the eyes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I'm a greater worshipper than if I was to pray tahajjud the whole night. It's not about doing a lot. It's about setting restrictions on yourself to prevent yourself from doing something. And Sahaba were very, very, very much in the habit of setting restrictions for themselves to keep themselves from doing anything haram. Of course, there was all the ibadah, the tahajjud, and the 5-time prayers, and there was all that, and the zakat. That was all by itself. But right now, the biggest problem we have is not that we don't do ibadah. The problem is we're too immersed in sin. We talk about the virtues of cell phone like it's the next revelation. So much benefit. You know, on YouTube, you can watch so many videos and bayans and learn so much from it. That's how Shaitan will do it. Exactly how Shaitan will do it. And we give our kids these dangerous things. In addition, this thing promotes individualism. Islam promotes collectivism. Islam is focused on people, society. It's not focused on each individual. Let me give you an example. Because it's not what we're talking about. I'll give you an example. We get grossed out. If somebody gets caught stealing, according to Islamic law, if 2 just witnesses testify against him, his hand will be severed. Not in prison, in public. In public. Why? Because we want to teach everyone, anybody does what happens. For the benefit of all, everybody. What we do here is forget about what will happen to society if we let the criminals go by not cutting their hands. We feel bad for the criminals and then we let them off easy. Individual, as opposed to looking out the benefit of. You understand what I'm saying? You understand what I'm saying? Right? So I said this promotes individualism. Have you ever seen 5 people sitting together and they're all doing their own thing on it? They're sitting together, but yet they're all their own world. So imagine you have a house, okay, mother, a father, and you have three children, right? And everybody is doing things good. Right? It's not a family. That's not a family. That's just five individual people that happen to be living together. Has no attachment to the person next to him because they can't even talk to each other while they're sitting right next to each other. I think that will answer the question of those who may say that I already answered. But this is one of the biggest dangers that let's say I have a given culture. Eventually they'll get it. I can't stop them. But what they not my you know, whatever. I will not be responsible. You want to lose your deal. So we're talking about building an Islamic lifestyle in the home. What are you talking about, Shaykh? What is happening today? Think about all the things that are happening in your house that are causing the displeasure of Allah, or potentially be causing the displeasure of Allah, that you don't need to have. You can prevent it. You can avoid it. Take them out. Take them out. We don't need to have all those devices. We can spend more time together as family. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had more family than we all had. 8 wives, 9 wives. After Asr, after he prayed his Asr Salah, have hey, spend time with his family. I feel strongly that today we have homes that have fathers and have mothers, but the children are still fatherless and motherless. Why? Because the parents will hand the children over to devices or to their school, public school teachers, and will not actually give them quality time. What type of environment? How? Something you have to think about. What type of environment? It may be very difficult for us if we're coming from overseas. Because we don't see our fathers maybe do the same thing, right? You know, it's kind of like he's just there, the father figure, and but there's no action. It can't work like that here. Because I think I've mentioned here is that it's heavily influenced by one person or another. All depends on the amount of time. If they spend more time with their peers in school than they have with you, then they become their parents and their family, and you become their speech. That's one of the prophecies that the Prophet made. Time will come when a person will love his friend, make good to his friend, but be good to his parents. Why? Did it happen out of nowhere that child was born like that? Or was it some type of mistakes that the parents made on it happened? If we want to build a quality environment, it's very important to have family time. It's very important to get rid of those things that can cause the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Specifically devices as much as possible. And if the kids are already addicted to this stuff, then because of the addiction, they need to do something with that time. It's like a withdrawal. They don't know what to do with it. It's the parents' responsibility to find an outlet for them. That outlet could be whatever. Right? Last year, my family and 4 or 5 of us went to Turkey, and we didn't go for sightseeing or tourism. What we went really for was because there's a lot of Islamic history in Turkey. There's history in Saudi Arabia, but it's being wiped out, and you're not allowed to go visit. Push the button. I don't know how it is. I think I've heard it's changed. But that's how it is. With Turkey, the Islamic history is very well. So we took a 17-day trip across the central Turkey to go to a place called Sivas. Beautiful, small little city nestled in the valley. It used to be one of the capitals of the Seljuk Empire. You know why I really went? I really went. That's the good. I could have gone alone. Cheaper. But it's about family. And I'm sitting here talking about Islamic history and how glorious it was. And now they get and they see every village has a huge masjid. Every town has a masjid. And you're just on the highway and you hear the adhan going off, and you just take the highway, road, pray your salah, back on the road. Kids never see this in their life. For the first time in their life, oh my God, this is real. It was an eye opener. Beautiful environment. The point that I'm making is I had to invest that money. I had to invest that time because I need to keep the children. So there's a whole number of things in front of you right now. Number one, be close to the money. What else did I mention? Family time, very important. Staying away from those things that make you sick. Let's mean pictures, photos, images in your house. Rasulullah's life has been very clear about it. You can make any interpretation you want that it refers to this and it refers to that, but what is the safer bet? What is the safer bet? Avoid it. It's not fard. It's not wajib. It's not sunnah. And by the way, this reminds me of something else. For some reason, we human beings like to dwell in pain. When you look at a picture of somebody from your family who passed away 50 years ago, and you think about that, does it make you feel better or worse? Because you go back in time, you go down memory lane, as we say, right? And you think about, and you think about your kids when they were small. You have pictures of them. I remember when he was small. But that time isn't coming back. So what do you think? What are you trying to make out of this picture? You're dwelling in something that you You're staying in the past, you're trying to bring it into the present and continue in the future when it's just not imagination. So going down memory lane is very, very dangerous because it keeps us in the past, while the Quran wants to keep us on the future. وَبِالْآخِرَةِ هُمْ يُوقِنُونَ. Akhirah is all about the future. Allah keeps on talking to us about the future, and we want to stay stuck in the past. So we don't need those things. Why do we need those things? And if we had, alhamdulillah, we all have a strong connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we need to establish that principle that if there is a chance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may not like it, let's just get rid of it. It's not necessary. For myself, I have 5 children. The oldest is like, before I think 24, like 5. I have a single picture of anyone. Except the passport. We have a choice there, right? Besides that, nope. And I really like it. Now we're like, oh my goodness, how could you do it? Before cameras came, what did people do? For thousands and thousands of years, people have lived without cameras. How much they must have suffered? Right? That's what we think. It's just all stuck in our head. Right? These are our delusions. Delusions created by Shaitan to keep us just glued to, so we don't actually work for the future. Yeah, we need to think about what are. So that's the third thing that I mentioned. What was the fourth thing that I mentioned? That's very important. And these are just general principles. Okay. Like I said, you can touch at this topic from many different angles and go into a lot of detail. Do you know that the Prophet ﷺ was mentioned at the beginning, but there's another point related to it. Rasulullah ﷺ made his house in the masjid. Okay. It was donated by one Sahabi from the Ansar who owned that property around. Rasulullah ﷺ wanted Fatima radiallahu anha, his daughter, who now is married to Ali ibn Abi Talib, to move next to him in the masjid. So Fatima radiallahu anha says, Ya Rasulullah, just tell the Sahabi. He owns that property. The same Sahabi who had donated the property that Rasulullah's house was on, and other properties as well. So why don't you just ask him? He said, I feel ashamed. I already took this property, right? He donated this to me, he donated that, he donated this, I'm going to ask him for another one. And somehow he found out it was Haritha radiallahu anhu. He came to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and he says, Ya Rasulullah, what you keep from my wealth and my property is better in my eyes than what I keep with me in my possession. I would rather you have it than for me to keep it. So that he gave that property over to Rasulullah. And another small little house was built for Fatima radiallahu anha and Ali ibn Abi Talib. I want to remind you, this is after they were married. And they lived to the right of Rasulullah. So, how many of you have been to Masjid al-Nabawi? So when you enter the Rawda area, okay, there is the grill, and there's a mimbar in front. So to the left is where the grill is. Just further back is where Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu's house. It's actually a part of that area that's surrounded by the grill. It was literally right next door. And then Hafsa radiallahu anhu's house was right after, which is where now the hallway is between Bab al-Salam and Bab al-Faqih. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would come out night sometimes to his daughter's house to see if they prayed tahajjud. The hadith of Bukhari. So he says to Ali radiallahu anhu and Fatima radiallahu anha, Ala tusalliyan, did you not pray? This is after they're married. But it's concern for the children to the very end. So Ali radiallahu anhu says, Anfusuna biyadillah ya Rasulullah. Our lives are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yab'athuna hina ba'athana. He wakes us up when he wants to wake us up. In other words, we couldn't wake up, so we couldn't wake up. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam didn't respond. كان مولد وهو ضرب على فخذه. He turned around, he was hitting his hand against his thigh, and he said, وكان الإنسان أكثر شيء جدلا. He argued too much. He didn't like that response. Why are you justifying the fact that you didn't wake up for tahajjud by putting it all in the hands of Allah? Right? But it shows you how the Prophet ﷺ was doing tarbiyah of his son-in-law and his daughter right up to the very end. Keeping watch. I'm not saying we should do that, but as long as our children are in our home, making sure that they are following the deen of Allah. And don't be a hypocrite, because your children will call you a hypocrite tomorrow. The day they grow up and you are telling them your whole life, pray salah, and you never prayed, they'll call you a hypocrite. Hypocrite. Telling us to pray salah, never prayed themselves, never do this himself. Right? In the early stages of life, a son loves his father like a hero. Then a point comes in time where the son can't stand the father. Because now he's growing up, he wants to be cool, he wants to be with his friends, right? And then later on, he grows up and he matures and thinks about, father used to teach me this, my father used to tell me that, my father used to teach me that. He had a lot of hikmah. He was a man of wisdom. He taught me all these things. Now I'm learning because I'm living that practical life. Now I'm following that same line. Now I'm married. Now I got children. Now I'm realizing all those things that my father said. And I realize that's when the du'as come from the bottom of the heart for that father. But it's also the other way around. What kind of father was this? He didn't want anything to do with talk about deen. Nothing. Your only purpose was education. Your only purpose was make as much money as possible. You know? I'm going to end with this, inshallah. So, this is in Canada. One of my friends was the Imam of the Masjid. A father comes with his son to the Imam Sahib and he says, brother, if you take him out with Tabligh Jama'ah and you fix him up in 40 days, I'll give you $25,000. $25,000. So the kid, his son, turns around, tells the Imam, my friend, then the Imam Sahib got the idea of $25,000. It's not going to work. Here's the problem. The Shaykh, my friend, tells me that this father had a job in the city. He got a higher paying job in another city. He would come back listen. So his children grew up without him. Now all that money he's making is of no use except to present it as $25,000 and fix my kid. Why didn't you just not make half of it or a quarter of it, and then you'd at least have your child here? So don't think about making big money. Think about raising your children, creating a good environment, taking out those things that you know or you are suspicious that will turn you away, or that cause the displeasure of Allah. Ask your mom, ask your children. Just leave it alone. And sometimes you don't have to ask anybody. Rasulullah said, this haya that we have is a part of our iman. Haya doesn't mean modesty, by the people translate. Haya means the ability to distinguish between right and wrong. And it's a special characteristic of iman. The haya shu'bah, right? He says, وَالْإِثْمُ مَا حَاكَ فِي صَدْرِكَ وَكَرِهْتَ أَنْ يَطَّلِعَ عَلَيْهِ النَّاسُ. Right? إِثْمُ مَا حَاكَ فِي صَدْرِكَ. What is a sin? Sometimes you can't tell what a sin is. But your iman will tell you that, you know what, it's not. There's something out of it. I don't think this is. When you hear your iman speaking, telling you that, that means that you need to get rid of it. You need to get rid of that from your life and from your children's life, your home. Listen to what your iman says. And you don't need to go anywhere. But we don't listen. We override it over and over until it doesn't speak anymore because, like our wife tells us to do something, right? We don't listen. She tells us again, we don't. And the third time we do it, she doesn't say anything. We say, fine. The point. That's exactly what the iman does. You did it once, you did it twice. After that, I said, okay, you don't want to listen. That's the death of your iman. You got to listen to it the first time. That's what made Banu Israel cursed by Allah. Because not only did they commit sin, but they also killed the very people that were calling them towards goodness and haqq. Not only did they justify their sin, they killed the people who were trying to bring them towards good, achieve. So they're cursed for life. Look at the curse of Allah upon them. Look at the curse of Allah upon them. They don't have a seed of compassion. Man la yarham la yurham. Whoever doesn't have mercy, Allah will show them no mercy. No mercy. This is because the curse of Allah is upon them. And don't be surprised they're acting like them. Don't be surprised. These are killers of Anbiya. These are killers of prophets. If they can kill the best people on the face of this earth, why would they not kill anybody else? Okay? May Allah protect us.
Inshallah, brothers, we'll have some of the boys walking around passing out some cards. Inshallah. If you have any questions, you may write them down and please give them to the students. The students will be walking around with them, inshallah. They're grabbing them from the back, so if you'll just bear with us for 2 minutes, they'll grab the cards and they'll hand them on.
That's the way to recognize. Okay, but that's not why they're called why they call it Ibrahim. Ibrahim was the nickname of Jacob. Yaqub alayhi salam. So Yaqub alayhi salam was the son of Ishaq. So all Jewish people are descendants of Jacob. Therefore, for them, his nickname Israel is very good. That's why they name it. Right.
Assalamu alaikum. As your ulama is different from the topic you're talking about, this is different. But Qabla and Bada in Salah, like sometimes, like you know, in Isha, right? The last two surahs you should not, two rakat you should read only Fatiha, no surah. For example, like you say Bismillah ar-Rahman, right? After Fatiha, you say Qul Allahu Ahad. Okay, yeah, so you stop, but you add something to Fatiha. Whether you have to do that, so certain kind of stuff they are tricky. It's a little bit hard. You don't even finish the whole of the eye or all of this, and then whether you have to make sujud or no, or something like that. But
I'll answer. So, if you're praying Isha Salah, in the first two rak'ahs, you have to pray, recite Surah Fatiha and a Surah with. Right? That Surah has to be equivalent to at least Inna A'tayna al-Kawthar, which is 3 ayahs. If you recite anything less than that, then you will be required to do the remedial prostration, which is called Sajda Sahab, at the end of the Salah. So that only goes for the first two rak'ahs of Isha, first two rak'ahs of Maghrib, both rak'ahs of Fajr, first two rak'ahs of Asr, first two rak'ahs of Dhuhr. Last two rak'ahs, according to us, the Hanafiya, only Surah Fatiha. Only Surah Fatiha. And if you were to add a surah to it, though, some of our scholars of the opinion that you don't have to recite those out, even if you add a surah to the second two rak'ahs after Surah Fatiha. Does that answer your question? Does that answer your question? Does that answer your question? Okay. You mean the Salatu Salam upon, right? Salatu Ibrahim. Okay. So only that, but you're saying if you did it in the second rak'ah. You're right. So you will have to set this up. You will have to do Sajda Sahab. So, for example, if you recited in the second rak'ah while you were sitting after the tashahhud, and you recited Salat Ibrahimi after that, and then you went up, since you delayed in coming back up, you'll have to do Sajda Sahab. They say at least 3 subhanallah.
The question is that can you please explain the important amal that a man and woman should do at home to create the environment of deen?
One of the most important things that we could do in order to create a good environment in our homes is to have a space in our home. It doesn't have to be big, very small. That's allocated just for ibadah, worship, like a masjid. The Prophet ﷺ had one in his very own home. Even though his house was just one room and it was very small, but he still had a masjid in it, a place where he prayed his salah. And he didn't do anything else in that place but ibadah. Even though the masjid was just around, as soon as you leave the door, right, you enter into the masjid, Masjid Nabi. But still, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam kept a separate place in his house just for things. There's also hadith in Sahih Bukhari and all the authentic hadith collections that mention that don't make your home a cemetery. What does it mean by making your home a cemetery? You don't do ibadah. You don't pray your 2 rak'ah sunnah. You don't pray your sunnahs there. That's why most of the time the Prophet ﷺ would not pray his sunnahs in the masjid. He would pray it at home. That doesn't mean that you can't pray your sunnahs in the masjid. In fact, most scholars encourage us to pray our sunnahs in the masjid to revive the sunnah. Right? But the Prophet ﷺ rarely ever prayed his sunnahs in the masjid. He prayed it in the house for the same reason that I mentioned. That the more sunnahs that you do in the house, ibadahs, the more you create a good environment for your body. Right? Also, we don't want to invite the shayateen into our home. What are the things that can invite shayateen into our home? We got to think about them. Basic things. When you enter into the home, what do you recite? There's a dua. اللهم إني أسألك خير المولد وخير المخرج بسم الله ولجنا بسم الله خرجنا وعلى الله ربنا توكلنا. Basic dua. You recite that, shaitan can't enter. When you leave, Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allah, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Right? You're protected against shaitan. Shaitan wants to enter your home. That tells you a lot about how important it is for him to destroy your environment. He's got plenty of space to be, but he wants to be in your house, of all places. Why? And he tries to get in there to destroy the environment, to cause friction between husband and wife. Okay. So, the du'as for entering the home, for exiting the home, okay? The dua for entering into the bathroom, very important. We take these things very lightly, and when something happens in our life, we blame it on somebody's black magic. Yeah, I know my neighbor. He never liked me. He's the one who started it, right? We have this like superstitious attitude, but Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us that when you have shayateen in your home and the angels of rahmah are not in your home, what's going to happen to your house? What's going to happen to you? You're going to face situation. Shaitan is going to create conflicts inside the house. So you've got to recite these du'as to protect yourself. It takes 3 minutes to memorize these du'as. And by the way, in addition to the protection you get, you're remembering Allah. The more you remember Allah in the house, in your own house, the more barakah, blessings you bring into the house. I also recommend one more thing. I talked about a masjid. I talked about the dua for entering and exiting. Okay, and for before you go into the bathroom. But one more thing that's very, very important. Is to revive the sunnahs of the Prophet ﷺ in our homes as much as possible. Small sunnah. Let me give you an example. Sisters, they work in the kitchen, right? Start before you cook. Bismillah. Start before we're eating, we always do Bismillah. But Rasulullah was in the habit of doing Bismillah before Bismillah before everything. And the purpose behind this is to keep the memory, the reminder of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the dhikr of Allah alive all the time. You're always remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can't remember it all the time, even sometimes. One more thing that I'll mention, and this is what scares people a lot. The Modi Sahib is going to come and he's going to just like load us with. I would really suggest you set up a time in your house, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just for the dhikr of Allah. That's easy. Setting up a specific amount of time in which you will do the dhikr of Allah. There are people, I tell them to do this, they come back and they will say, I do it, but my head's somewhere else. I said, why do you expect your head to be in the dhikr of Allah when the whole day you're thinking about dunya? It doesn't work like that. But you have to remember, if your heart is not busy in the remembrance of Allah, at least your tongue is. Shaitan doesn't like any one of your limbs to be remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all. So he will tell you, what's the point of doing dhikr of Allah? What's the point of praying salah if your mind is always somewhere else? This is just a deception. Tell him, if my heart's not in the dhikr of Allah, at least my tongue is. And by the barakah of my tongue, inshallah, one day my heart will also be in the remembrance of Allah. It's just a matter of time. But we have to give a certain amount of time every single day. And we have to set it just like we set our times for going for work and coming back from work. We have times for everything else. It's 10 to 15 minutes. And that's all up to our personal schedules and what we're busy with. How much time we want to actually give to this, that we can do on a consistent basis. This is very important. Don't give yourself, I'm going to do 30 minutes, and then you can't keep it up for more than a week. You want to increase it later on, that's fine. But for now, I can only do 10 minutes. That'll be a little bit difficult, but I can do 10. I can do it daily, and I can do it, for the rest of my life. 10 minutes is not a big deal. Do it. This will bring a lot of barakah in your life because Rasulullah said, Afdalul a'mali adwamuha wa in qalla, the best of good deeds are the ones that are done consistently even though they're little. They're little, but they're done consistently. That's more appreciated by Allah than the half an hour and then you just stop after a week. Much we all can do. Nobody can say, I don't have 10 minutes of my time to give for the remembrance of Allah. In the time of the Sahaba, they used to call it hizb. Hizb meant certain things that they would read. It would be dhikr, it would be salatu salam upon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ubay ibn Ka'ab came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, I have a certain amount of time that I've set. Okay. And I want to set within that certain amount of time, I want to get a little bit of time for the Salatu Salam. How much should I give Ya Rasulullah? So Rasulullah, he said, no, he said, should I give 1/4? Rasulullah said, you can give 1/4. But if you do more, that's better. There's a hadith of Tirmidhi. And he says, Ya Rasulullah, okay, I'll do half. He said, half is good, but if you do a little bit more, that's better. Then he increased it, 3/4. And then Rasulullah said, that's good. If you do a little more, that's better. He said, Ya Rasulullah, give all my time. Rasulullah said, if you give all this time for Salatu Salam, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide you everything in the dunya and grant you maghfirah in the akhir. Right? So the Sahaba had times that they'd set outside of their prayers, outside of their tahajjud, just for the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to establish that in our life. Very important. Any other questions? It's a very good question, actually. What if your parents are divorced, and how do you deal with it from an Islamic perspective? So, I don't know if the question is related to building an Islamic environment in your home after their divorce, meaning you're living with one parent or the other, or just about how to fulfill the right of both parents. Okay. Usually, what happens in divorces, I'm going to assume that it's the second that they want me to elaborate on. First point. The problem with parents nowadays is that they're not even parents anymore. They get their kids involved in their personal affairs. It may be the mother who's always bashing the father in front of the children, or the father who's bashing the mother. Because they're trying to win their children over. In reality, they're damaging their children more. Right? Because they're destroying their relationship with one of the parents or the other. That's why Islam has set very specific rights for both parents. That no matter what anybody says, if the mother says this about your father, he still has his rights because Islam gave it to him. And whatever your father says about your mother, Islam has already set rights for her. He can say whatever he wants. Even if it's true, she still has those rights. What are those rights? Fulfilling their huquq as much as possible in terms of financially, if you can, being there for them in their times of hardship, giving them time. For parents as they get older, that's one of the most important. Is giving them time. They don't want money, they just want time. So giving them time. And when they start bashing your father or your mother, whichever way it is, you learn to ignore. You can't do anything about it because they're hurt. And whatever they're saying is out of pain and anguish for what they suffered or what they could be perceived as suffering. Maybe wasn't real suffering. But in any case, they feel hurt by it and they're just spilling it all out on you. But you can't get involved in that relationship between them. You have to stay out of it as much as possible in order to keep yourself balanced. And that requires you to just listen and ignore. Listen and ignore. And it may be true, by the way. He did this. He did do it. She did this. She did. But that's none of your business because they're your mother and your father. That's between them, each other, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When they go in court in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge between them who who violated whose rights. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will establish justice there. But at least you won't be a part of it, that you sided with one against the other and you didn't fulfill that parent's right, but you did fulfill this one's right. No. So you don't want to be a part of that at all. You don't want to be a part of that whole mess that's going to happen later on. You leave that between themselves. If they are even right, you just say, I got nothing to do with it, but I'll listen to it because they're my parent and they're hurt. And my job is just to listen to them and be there for them. That's it. How to handle if kids are rude to parents, even though we do all tarbiyah at home. How to prevent from this. Something is not happening right. Kids are not going to be rude if you did the tarbiyah properly. I guarantee you, there's something not right happening. If your kids are going to school and then you're saying, I do all the tarbiyah, I'm sorry, but you're not doing all the tarbiyah. The public school is doing all the tarbiyah, You're doing a small portion of it. Okay? So we have to get that out of our minds that, okay, when they come home at 3 o'clock, and if they don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, do that, and I correct them, and I do their tarbiyah, and I make sure they're doing everything right, you have to remember, they come with a whole load of stuff from that school. Things they're learning, bad words, bad, things that they learn. Now it's probably 10 times worse than it was in my time. But the stuff that they're learning now and the level of disrespect that's taught, incorporated into the curriculum as a system. You can't undo that. There's no way you can undo that by just them coming home at 3 o'clock and correcting it all. I'm not saying don't send your kids to school. What I'm saying is teach your kids to trust you more than what they learn over there. And be on top of everything they learn. That means what I talked about earlier, open communication with your kids. So what did you learn today? And then they'll say something. There's a lot of things they won't tell you because they'll feel shame. They know it's wrong. But the problem is, it's not their fault they feel shame. You're the one who sent them there in the first place. You should feel shame, not them. But anyways, the communication is important. What did you learn today? And I'm not talking about, how was science class? What did you learn about science? I'm talking about, teacher say anything against the deen or Islam, and you talk about Islam. Then you can start a discussion and guide them in the right direction. Very important. So there's something lacking in the tarbiyah if the kids are being. But that doesn't mean that the kids won't be rude some of the time, even then, because the kids are kids. And then we all have our own definitions of what rude means. Okay? If a kid is playing, that's not rude. But we all have our own definition. If he's talking back, yes, that's rude. But here's a problem. When you raise your children, okay, you have to be consistent with your principle. If they talk back to you once and you ignored it, and the next time they talk back to you, you told them, "Astaghfirullah, you're so rude," then why didn't you stop them the first time? So they get a very confused message. You have to be consistent each time they do that wrong so that they understand that this is wrong. Otherwise, when they talk back once or twice or thrice and you don't respond, but the fourth time you do, or the fifth time you do, and the sixth time you do, but the first 3 times you didn't, for them, they don't know what you're really trying to say. Unconsciously, they don't know what you're trying to say. Are you saying this is wrong? Because if it's wrong, then why didn't you say it in the beginning when I said that? So you have to be consistent. Children don't understand unclear messages. Kids are very clear, they're very direct, and that's what they understand. Like a child was in front of me in the trolley or the grocery stores. He kept on looking at me, Mama. He's looking at his mother, he's looking at me, he said, Mama. Oh. I knew he was going to say something really good or really bad. And she was ignoring him because she knew he was looking at me and he wanted to say something about me and she's going to feel embarrassed. Okay? So he kept on going, Mom, you don't like me, Mom. Like what? Jesus Christ. Okay, let's go to the next one. So when I told that joke to some of my friends, but the thing is, kids are very direct. Like they don't have filter. If something goes through their head, they're gonna say it. That's exactly how they understand instructions as well. So you have to be consistent so your instruction is very clear. Women recommended to wear hijab at home at all times? No, of course not. That would make life very difficult. Makes her home. It's obviously preferable that she covers her head, not necessarily with hijab, but no, she doesn't have to wear a hijab. There's a riwayah about Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam first started receiving revelation, so Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam would come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would tell Khadija, Jibreel. So Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha would keep her covered. So she said, Ya Rasulullah, I'm going to take it off. I want you to tell me what happened. She took it off and she asked, Rasulullah, is he there? Gone. Jibreel Islam is not anymore. He left. Why? Modesty. Modesty. They're attracted to good. Just like shayateen are attracted to evil, malaika are attracted to good. They're attracted to compassion. They're attracted to modesty, chastity, all these good things. That's why it's recommended, but it's not imposed. It's not enforced. How can we as parents be more patient with the kids? I promise myself every time to not overreact on their faults, but somehow I end up reacting sometimes. Any tips would be appreciated. I'm assuming this is coming from one of the sisters. I'm assuming this is coming from one of the sisters. So, you're talking about anger, right? Not even being able to control your anger when your child does something wrong. So, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught us that if something triggers you and gets you really angry, at that time, it's very important to change your position. Change your position. So if you're in a standing position when you get angry, then sit down. If you're in a sitting position, lay down. If you're in a laying position, stand up. Change your position with that intention. I know that sounds very strange, but I tried it out. It works. Of course it's going to work. It's sunnah. The way of Rasulullah Sallallahu. You're breaking the heat. Another thing that Rasulullah Sallallahu taught is stick yourself closer to the earth. This is in the hadith of Tirmidhi. Why? Because the earth is very humble. We walk over it all the time. It never complains. Right? And that's why Islam is the only religion that requires that when we pray on the ground. We don't sit on chairs unless we have what? Handicap or some type of medical problem. But if you go to the churches, go to synagogue, go to most other places, everything is chairs. That's just their way of praying. Our way of praying is always closer to the earth. And the closest you are to Allah when you're in the state of sajda, touching the earth, your forehead. right? So changing your position, but the closer you are to the earth, the better. That doesn't mean, because sometimes when you're getting angry, you forget even that. You forget tips when you're angry. But it's a matter of getting into the habit. The good thing about this question is that the fact that the sister is worried about the fact that she has this problem is a sign of improvement in itself. Because you can only improve when you realize I have an issue and you are working towards it. Right? So if she doesn't remember the tip right now, I'm sure my wife will give me that. Oh. So how can a high schooler reduce their screen time? How can a high schooler reduce screen time? Set up times for everything. A schedule. Have you noticed when we go for jobs, there's always a set time for when you go and when you come back? Why is that? Because if times were not set, what would we do? Never go. Why are there set times for salah? Inna salata kanat ala al-mu'minina kitaban mawquta. There's set times for salah. Why? Because sometimes we would pray, sometimes we would not pray. That's just the way it works. Human beings work well with formats. Everything is set up in an arranged manner, and we work very well with it. But if it's not arranged and set up for us, then it's very difficult. That's why we have these here too. Right? Why do we got the carpet like this? Because it's arranged. Even if we will not be standing exactly according to the design, but we have a rough idea, and it helps us stay in line and close together. Arrangement is important. So setting up a time for everything. So screen time will be for only 2 hours a day, and that's it. And it will be from this time and this time. And you can change it according to the season. By the way, that's what I do for myself. It runs in our family. That there's certain screen times allow for certain things, but we have a set time. It's going to be like 1 hour, 2 hours. For myself too. Okay. So I can't use on my cell phone. I don't allow myself to use the Wi-Fi after that. Shut down completely. So no Wi-Fi for me. And it'll go earlier. In Ramadan, cell phone is completely shut down. Nothing in it. So I can keep myself as focused as I need to be, gaining the blessing. So setting times and allocating specific time and programming yourself to follow it all the way through is very, very important. It may be hard the first 10, 15, 20, 30 days. Okay. But once you get the hang of it, you'll find life will become a lot easier. There's a lot of questions. Yes. I appreciate it.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين إن هذا القرآن يهدي للتي هي أقوم ويبشر المؤمنين الذين يعملون الصالحات أن لهم أجرا كبيرا
وأن الذين لا يؤمنون بالآخرة أعتدنا لهم عذابا أليما ويدعو الإنسان بالشر دعاءه بالخير وكان الإنسان عجولا وجعلنا الليل والنهار آيتين فمحونا آية الليل وجعلنا آية النهار مبصرة لتبتغوا فضلا من ربكم ولتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب وكل شيء فصلناه تفصيلا وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا اقرأ كتابك كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا من اهتدى فإنما يهتدي لنفسه ومن ضل فإنما يضل عليها ولا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى وما كنا معذبين حتى نبعث رسولا سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين ما أصاب من مصيبة إلا بإذن الله ومن يؤمن بالله يهد قلبه والله بكل شيء عليم وأطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول فإن توليتم فإنما على رسولنا البلاغ المبين الله لا إله إلا هو وعلى الله فليتوكل المؤمنون يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن من أزواجكم وأولادكم عدوا لكم فاحذروهم وإن تعفوا وتصفحوا وتغفروا فإن الله غفور رحيم. إنما أموالكم وأولادكم فتنة والله عنده أجر عظيم. فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم واسمعوا وأطيعوا وأنفقوا خيرا لأنفسكم ومن يوق شح نفسه فأولئك هم المفلحون. إن تقرضوا الله قرضا حسنا يضاعفه لكم ويغفر لكم والله شكور حليم. عالم الغيب والشهادة العزيز الحكيم. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
Assalamu alaikum, respected elders, brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah, Bismillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Firstly, I would like to thank the visiting scholar, Sheikh Asim, and his wife for traveling all the way from Buffalo, spending time with us and enlightening us and educating us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase them in their knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep them close. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use them for his deen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him and his wife the best in this life and in the hereafter. Say Ameen, brothers. uh, brother Sharif, mashallah, he works and volunteers in the masjid as well. You might have seen him outside working many times. Mashallah, he's here. His grandmother passed away in Gambia. So we request you all to make dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive all her sins. Grant her Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen. Inshallah, after the Sunnah Salah, we'll have dinner, inshallah, outside. After that, there will be a very important program for the sisters upstairs. The wife of Sheikh Asim, she'll be conducting a halaqah exclusively for the sisters. The topic is modesty, marriage, and motherhood. So we request all the sisters upstairs, after finishing the dinner, please come back and inshallah to start off the halaqah on time so they can finish on time. And last but not the least, brothers, these kind of events have community dinner that involves cost, that involves expenses. We request everyone here to bear some of it, so it is easy for the operations to have such events very often. $5, $10, whatever you can do. Brother Karim is standing there at the Mohit system. You can just swipe your card and donate generously or contribute generously for this. There are many families that come, alhamdulillah, we gather together, have a good social gathering, listen to the deen, and we all benefit from it. So we should bear the cost of it. I request all the brothers and sisters to contribute generously for this. Jazakumullah.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers. I noticed, mashallah, there were a lot of questions prior to the salah. So just a quick reminder regarding those, inshallah, that if you were unable to have your questions answered, I myself and Sheikh Idris are here, of course. You can always ask us, or if it's something that we can't facilitate, inshallah, we have direct connection to Mulana Asim. We can always, inshallah, reach out back to him and answer those questions for you. Exactly.